The Rainbow Tower. Written by Alex Tymms. Illustrated by R H Stewart. Episode 19. Green. That's right, that panel there. Jed consulted the phone as the green workers began to leave the wall panel out of its fixing. Graham stood glowering at Clarice. "You realise this is illegal," he hissed, "and I shall say as much at any inquiry." Clarice ignored him and nodded for the workers to move the panel out the way. A mirrored glass wall slowly came into view as the men shuffled sideways. Jed consulted the phone again and stepped forward. He looked down one side of the glass and found what he was looking for. There were 2 catches, just as shown on the plans, and a pull-out handle. Jed flicked open the locks and began to slide the door sideways. A blast of cold air hit them all, rushing in from the small opening Jed had created. He's mad!" Graham shouted. That's outside!" He made to run forward, but Clarice stopped him. "But for Tower's sake," he said, turning to her, unable to hide the desperation in his voice. Jed slid the glass the whole way open, and all the greens, including Graham, stood and stared. Instead of a sheer drop into nothing, outside was a tangle of wind-blown plants. "There are doors like these all over Green," Jed called above the noise of the wind. "And they all lead out onto these balconies." Clarice took a step forward, her eyes filled with wonder, and her face quite different now that it wasn't arranged in its usual frown. "You were supposed to be able to grow plants outside the tower as well. On the original plans, they're called the Hanging Gardens." Graham pushed past and strode out the opening. "I knew it," he announced. "I just knew it." The others walked out to join him. Jed followed. His eyes narrowed as Graham strode around, telling everyone how he was sure these had been there all the time. Jed wished there had been a sheer drop instead of the balconies. Then he could have pushed Graham over it. If he did that, however, Silas, Marjorie and the others in blue would have no chance. Unfortunately, he needed help from these people. None of them spoke to Jed as they went wide-eyed from one part of the balcony to another. There was no "well done" or "thank you." Instead, they were all wrapped up in gazing at the plants and examining the soil in which they grew. Jed decided he didn't like Green very much. Above, around and below them were more balconies, all sticking out different distances from the tower and some disappearing round the corner of the building. Some were clearly for small market garden plants. Others were big enough for collections of trees. On all of them, the vegetation had run wild. It tumbled over the barriers at the edge, sometimes merging one balcony with another, and in places it was hard to see what the plants were growing in. "With these, we could exceed our quota with ease," Graham was saying. "They'd have to be hardy stock, mind. That wind—" Jed walked away towards the edge of the balcony, having had enough. He shut them all out, and instead looked around him, marvelling at his great-grandfather's design. The balcony above him jutted out still further than the one on which he stood, so he could clearly see the weathered bone on the underside. Unlike the floors, the hanging gardens were an extension of the tower's main supports. He pushed his way through the plants and reached the parapet marking the edge to look down. After the atrium, Jed had become used to the idea of there being an outside, but it had been an abstract word. It didn't have a form or create a picture in his head. Now he realised what it actually meant. Below him, white clouds wrapped the bottom of the green glass so he couldn't see blue or the levels below, and he had to squint at the bright reflection from the surface. He realised it was this light that had filled the atrium. Standing there in the warmth, it was hard to imagine the destruction inside. He heard Graham's voice still going on about how he'd suspected all along something like this existed. Jed imagined what it would be like to watch Graham falling down into the white clouds below, but with a sigh he reminded himself that his plan was to save everyone in the tower, including those like Graham. It was then Jed noticed something hidden by the foliage next to him. It looked like some ironwork sticking out from a balcony, which was strange, as it wouldn't mix well with the bone. He pushed the branches aside and gasped. Jed found himself staring across at another tower, or rather the remains of one. Its blackened surfaces looked long abandoned, but he could see enough of the skeletal form to know that it was built of concrete and steel rather than the bone of his tower. Through the broken outer walls, staircases and floors were visible, and suddenly an idea came to him. A way to save all the people trapped here. If they could all cross to the other tower, then they could use that as a way down. How was the big question, for it looked an impossible chasm to cross. Then Jed thought, if someone had asked him in Violet how to reach Green, he'd not have been able to answer them. Yet here he was, on a balcony of the Hanging Gardens. He'd managed to find a way here, and somehow he would find a way across to that tower. So it's true about the mass. Jed let the branches spring back in surprise. It was Clarice. He hesitated, quickly checking the other tower was once again screened from view. He didn't want to share that secret with these people at the moment. You need to open the lifts into Green from Blue or it'll kill everyone who's trapped, Jed said. What? Have them all running riot over our plants? Graham had come up to them. No way! I say we seal ourselves off. We can grow everything we need. There's even a water collection system. Jed thought about Silas, Marjorie, plus all the others from Blue who were counting on him and who would die if idiots like Graham had their way. He turned to Clarice. You have to let them in. Then we must keep climbing. It broke through from Violet to Indigo, then to Blue in no time. It will destroy Green before too long. Oh, scare stories, Graham puffed. We'll be fine here. He said it with the finality as if that ended the matter. We'll open the lifts, Clarice said quietly. What? Graham exploded. Well, I'm not staying here to have my brain fried by those goons from Blue. Good, Clarice replied, because you're coming with Jed and I. Jed and Graham both stared at her. We need to open the crossing into Yellow, then it's up to Red to find who's responsible for keeping us in the dark for so long. Jed stared at Clarice, then Graham. This wasn't what he wanted. Not at all. Thank you very much for listening to The Rainbow Tower. To see more of R H Stewart's excellent artwork, you'll find him on Instagram at roy.hootson.stewart. For Alex Tymms, why not try the novel OutCaste at ao3.com? Or, for something completely different, check out the Amier series on YouTube or at amier.com, also by Alex Tymms. The Rainbow Tower. Text copyright Alex Tymms. Illustrations copyright R H Stewart. The right of Alex Tymms and R H Stewart to be identified as the author and illustrator of this work has been asserted in accordance with the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988.